We'll start. It's time. First of all, we have to say to David Weinberg Mazel Tov with his first grandson.
Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov.
And now we'll go to Chai, Dr. Chai Eytan Cohen Yanarocak. Is an expert of Turkey. He's a native of Istanbul, the Jewish community of Istanbul. I met him first when I wrote a book on Turkish-Israeli relations. He was a young fellow at that time, and he volunteered.
Forever young, forever young.
Very young, still young.
Ephraim, can you ask everybody to mute themselves, please? Because there's a lot of background noise.
Yes, please unmute yourself.
No, mute.
Mute, yes.
Mute yourself.
Excuse me, please mute yourself. And Chai worked as a research assistant when I wrote the book on Turkish-Israeli relations. He fell in love with Israel, decided to make Aliyah. He brought his parents. He also worked on a PhD at Tel Aviv University, and he became one of the, maybe the foremost expert on Turkey in Israel. And he's, of course, also a research fellow at our institute, at JISS. And he will brief us today on Erdogan and Turkey. Chai, it's your floor.
Thank you very much, Ephraim. Good evening or good afternoon also for you. It's a great pleasure for me to deliver this short lecture to you via Zoom. As Ephraim said, my name is Chai. Originally, I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and then I moved to Israel. Today, we are going to speak about the Turkish foreign policy. Before starting, again, I kindly ask you to mute yourselves if it's possible. Now, please let me know if you can see this. PowerPoint presentation. Hang on a second. Ephraim.
We see it.
Okay, great. So let's start. So when we are speaking about the Turkish foreign policy, first of all, I would like to divert your attention to a very important policy paper called the National Security Policy Document. This document is also known as the Red Book. The first ever Red Book, by the way, the Red Book and the National Security Policy Document is designed basically to define the main threats against Turkey. This particular document is published every 5 years. The first Red Book ever published in 1965, then 1970, 75, and so forth. So this particular document is a top secret document, but every 5 years, whenever a new Red Book is published, the Turkish government intentionally is leaking the most important parts, roughly of course, of this Red Book to the press so that we can have a clue who are the most important threats against Turkey. So until 2010, this national security policy document was penned by the Turkish armed forces. However, due to some government purge against the military personnel, most important army generals were imprisoned, and as a result, for the first time, the civilian government of Erdogan, they seized the opportunity, and in 2010, they penned this national security policy document. And here you're seeing the former Turkish foreign minister and also Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu. He wrote a book about with the name Strategic Depth. And in his book, basically he declared his own neo-Ottomanist vision that Turkey should go back to the Middle East and it should maximize its interests by adopting a soft power policy, which also required Turkey to downgrade its relations with the State of Israel. And of course, As we may remember, Turkish-Israeli relations had a huge blow with the Mavi Marmara flotilla to Gaza. And as a result, for the first time in the Turkish history, Israel was mentioned in the Red Book as an actor which is destabilizing the whole region, end quote. And traditionally, the most important players that were defined as national security threats against Turkey, of course, were Greece, Russia, and Iran. However, thanks to Davutoğlu's new vision, all of these states were declared as new friends of Turkey, and they were not declared as threats against Turkey. However, when the Arab Spring reached its climax, we happened to see that Davutoğlu's whole vision began to collapse, because at the end, Davutoğlu always supported the Muslim Brotherhood affiliated political parties in the Middle East. And therefore, in Syria, Turkey sided with the Free Syrian Army and not with Bashar Assad. In Egypt, they sided with Mohammed Morsi, who was later toppled by Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. In the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they sided with Hamas. And in Libya, they also sided with the Islamic Brotherhood of Mr. Sarraj. Of course, I will deal with that later. So when this particular foreign policy doctrine had collapsed, another important policy doctrine emerged called the precious loneliness, or in Turkish, it's değerli yalnızlık. The architect of this policy doctrine is Ibrahim Kalın. He is the spokesperson of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, of the Turkish president, and he basically designed this new policy doctrine on the ideals of Islamic morals. Let me say, from their perspective, Egypt of Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, or Israel, or the Bashar al-Assad's regime, all of these states are considered as illegitimate states. And as a result, they chose to downgrade their relations with these states. According to Kalın, the history will judge them in the future. So since they have to become accountable for the future Turkish generations, they are refraining from maximizing the Turkish interests, the current interests, in favor of this moral worldviews. So basically, this whole, I already provided you the infrastructure of this understanding. Now, I would like to divert your attention how this Turkish foreign policy evolved. You're seeing here the picture of Erdogan, Merkel, and Obama, and also the picture of Mohammed Morsi, who was toppled as the Egyptian president. The thing is, we all remember, I guess, that Turkey experienced a failed coup attempt in July 15, 2016. And when, in that particular night, Mr. Erdogan was expecting a phone call from Barack Obama and Angela Merkel to see that both of the leaders, who are the most important leaders of the West, are condemning this failed coup attempt. But these phone calls never came, and even here we understood, like the ordinary citizens understood, that the failed coup attempt indeed failed. Then Obama and Merkel called Erdogan, and at that particular time, Erdogan understood that also Obama and also Merkel, they were hoping for the victory of the coup perpetrators. And as a result, I can say that at that night, Mr. Erdogan began to suffer from Mohammed Morsi trauma, okay? Meaning that the West was expecting for his fall, and they were eager to cooperate with the new coup perpetrators while he could be in prison. And as a result, Mr. Erdogan, in order to maximize his own interests, began to launch a rapprochement with the Russian Federation. In the aftermath of this failed coup attempt, the most important, the first official visit of Mr. Erdogan was to St. Petersburg, to Vladimir Putin, in order to mend his relations with the Russians. Now I would like to show you here a map. This map is showing you the military presence of the Turkish armed forces in the world. Of course, nowadays we also should add Libya. Libya also should be marked as red. So let me summarize it for you, the presence of Turkish armed forces, and you may understand how the Turkish foreign policy under Erdogan became very aggressive. Turkey has presence in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in Albania, in Libya. Before the coup against Omar al-Bashir, they also began to establish here in Sudan a military base in the island called Suwakin. Nowadays, this venture is frozen. In 2017, they inaugurated a new military base in Somalia. Also in Qatar in the same year, in 2017, they inaugurated a new military base in Qatar. According to the Turkish press, whether you buy it or not, but that's how it is portrayed in the Turkish press. From their perspective, the presence of the Turkish army in Qatar is deterring the Saudi Arabian regime for not occupying Qatar. Again, you may put here a question mark. And of course, in Caucasia, Turkey has a base in Azerbaijan, and also they have, in the framework of a NATO mission, they are also present in Afghanistan. And since 1974, they are also present in Cyprus, because as invaders in the northern portion of the island. And since 2016, they are also present in Syria and also present in Iraq. Now I would like to show you the Northern Iraqi map. I only downloaded this map from the official website of the Public Relations Department of Mr. Erdogan's office. Here you can see the Turkish military bases in northern Iraq. This shaded area represents the area that is controlled by the PKK Kurdish organization. And this shaded area, according to the Turkish administration, is considered as the disputable territory between the Kurdistan regional government of KDP, of Masoud Barzani, and the central Iraqi government. So as we can see, the Turks have a very respectable presence in northern Iraq, and we can call them, of course, as occupiers. Another important issue is all of this Kurdish presence in all of the southern Turkish border. I already showed you the map of northern Iraq. Let me show you the current map of Syria, and then I will get back to this cartoon. This is the current map of Syria. The yellow color stands for the Kurdish PYD-YPG. The turquoise color is representing Turkey. As you can see, Turkey is controlling 3 different cantons here. The first canton that was captured was Jarablus. The second canton that was captured, Afrin, and the last but not the least, Tel El Abyad and Ras El Ain cantons were captured. By the way, all of these cantons were captured by the Turkish armed forces in 3 different military operations. Let me remind you each one of them. The first one was the Euphrates Shield that was launched right after the failed coup attempt. What was the most important objective of this Euphrates Shield? It was designed in order to break the geographical contiguity between the Afrin canton, then it was under the control of the PYD. In 2016, this whole area was yellow. Okay.
The Kurdish army, please.
Yeah, PYD-YPG is the Kurdish guerrilla army in Syria. Okay, so from the Turkish point of view, the geographical continuity of the Kurdish lands, starting from northern Iraq and coming then to northern Syria, from their perspective, it constituted a national security threat against Turkey. And as a result, they decided to break this whole strip into different portions. As you see, first they broke here. First, they broke this geographical contiguity in Jarablus with the Operation Euphrates Shield. Then they launched the Operation Olive Branch later in 2018. And last year we happened to see the Operation Peace Spring. As you may see, all of the names of these operations are very peaceful, because the Turks are only bringing peace to the entire humanity, if you didn't know. Okay, so according to this worldview, kindly ask you to look at this cartoon that I got it from an Islamist cartoon called Misvak, which is affiliated with the Turkish government. From their perspective, all of this Kurdish project that is emerging, sort of a fortification wall between Turkey and whole of the Arab world. From their perspective, the Kurds that are sponsored with money and of course politically by Israel are trying to erect a Kurdish wall in order to disconnect Turkey from the Arab world. And from their perspective, the extraterritorial Turkish military operations are foiling this Zionist plot. And as you can see here, the snake, of course, the snake is the Kurdish snake, YPG and PYD. YPG is the armed wing of the PYD. It's the same thing. And as you see, when the Turkish axe is cutting the snake into two pieces, you're seeing that we are seeing oil and not blood. It means that the Kurds, they sold themselves for money. Okay, so this whole Kurdish independence issue or Kurdish statehood issue, from the eyes of the Turkish public, for many, we can say that it is seen as a Zionist plot. Okay. Another important issue here is Idlib. You're seeing here another province. Now I'm focusing on this green province here, and this is here Idlib. Idlib is another story. Turkish armed forces is present here, but it is not controlling this province. They have some observation outposts, and they are trying to maintain the ceasefire between the moderate, so-called moderate Sunni forces and the Assad regime, which is supported by Russia. You're seeing here a shaded area. This shaded area is the junction of M4 and M5 highways. So here Russian and Turkish forces are making some convoys in order to supervise if the ceasefire is broken or not. The most important issue here is in Idlib that it is nowadays hosting approximately 3 million civilians, meaning that in case a total war will occur in this land, so this will create a population, a refugee influx into Turkey. And Turkey made it very clear in last February, when 35 Turkish soldiers were killed in Idlib, in the same area. Turkey, the Turkish president got mad because they wanted European Union to also involve in Idlib in favor of Turkey to balance Russia. And when the European Union did not do anything about it, so Mr. Erdogan opened the borders with Greece and tried to influx these refugees, that try to create a refugee influx into Europe by using this refugee card. Of course, we all know that because of the coronavirus, Erdogan had to stop this refugee using the refugee crisis, and he again closed the borders with Greece. But we can see that it's a very crucial problem also for Turkey, but more for Turkey, we can say that it's a very crucial problem for Europe itself. Another important issue is the Turkish support to Palestinian cause. Here you can see the Turkish flag in the border of Israel-Gaza border. Last year and the year before, we happened to see frequently demonstrations of the Palestinians in the borderline. They clashed with the Israel Defense Forces, and during these demonstrations, we also the Turkish flags. We happen to know that the Turkish non-governmental organizations, such as the Red Crescent, or TIKA, or IHH, or other Islamic foundations, they began to pour lots of money to Gaza Strip in the name of humanitarian aid. And of course, we also happen to know that the Turkish government is also funding lots of projects in the West Bank. The most important, maybe, Turkish stance, the pro-Palestinian stance, was very much could be seen easily when Donald Trump declared Jerusalem as the capital city of Israel. From our perspective, he already declared something was very well known for us, but for the world it was a very brave statement. So Erdogan sought to confront the US president, and instead of accepting Jerusalem as Israel's capital, so he said, no, Jerusalem is Palestine's capital. So you're seeing a poster here that it is declaring that Jerusalem is Palestine's capital. And of course, in the aftermath of Donald Trump's declaration about Jerusalem, Erdogan on that time, he was the head of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and he summoned all of the Muslim leaders to Istanbul for an international summit. And on that particular day, the government's horn, Yeni Şafak newspaper, urged from the Muslim states to organize a new Muslim NATO to challenge Israel and to force Israel to a just peace, end quote. Okay, so according to this vision that was designed, by the way, by Mr. Erdogan's former military advisor, General Adnan Tanrıverdi, according to General Tanrıverdi's vision, each Muslim state had to donate 4 or 5 tanks or 4 or 5 military jets to the pan-Islamic army in order to defeat Israel. And you're seeing here, this graphic appeared also on the newspaper itself, and also on the website of the newspaper. Here you're seeing the initials of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Here it is written the defense budget. You're seeing the Israel's defense budget and the Organization of Islamic Conference's budget. You're seeing here the population, and you're seeing here the number of the soldiers. So they are trying to show in a concrete way that Israel can be defeated. Of course, in case that all of the Muslim states can unite for this whole vision. Of course, when the Turkish ordinary people are reading these kind of science fiction, let me say, pan-Islamic vision, so we happen to see that they are also thinking out loud about a potential Israeli-Turkish war. Here, there is a book called The Operation David. It is speaking about a potential Israeli-Turkish war that is erupting after a brinkmanship in the Eastern Mediterranean. You may understand later why we are speaking about the Eastern Mediterranean, but the pro-Palestinian stance of the Turkish people under Erdogan is growing steadily. Anti-Israelism is like becoming a complement in Turkey. If you are anti-Israel, if you're pro-Palestinian, so you are, it's a good start for your career, let me say. And I already mentioned about the Eastern Mediterranean. So here is a screenshot from, again, the same newspaper, from the Yeni Şafak newspaper, which is, again, considered as the horn of the Turkish government. Here, the Israeli, Greek Cypriots, Greek and Egyptian alliance is tagged as axis of evil. Şer İttifakı in Turkish means axis of evil, and Doğu Akdeniz means the Eastern Mediterranean. So now let's understand why do they call it the axis of evil, and how they are trying to confront this axis of evil. Now you're seeing the picture of the first Turkish warship made in Turkey, called Heybeliada. The Turks have launched their own warship program, the national warship program, and they already could dispatch their 4 corvettes into the Eastern Mediterranean to escort their drilling ships and seismic ships. And nowadays they are also building their first aircraft carrier called Anadolu. By the way, since US is not going to provide F-35s to Turkey, we understand that the Turkish armed forces will use its helicopters on this TCG Anadolu, because it is designed for a how should I say, the vertical, vertical landing, and as a result we may soon see that the also Anadolu may come to Eastern Mediterranean. You're also seeing here, this was the old seismic ship of Turkey, and it was replaced with a new modern one called Barbaros. These seismic ships are also equipped with the latest technology, and besides that, the Turkish fleet is also equipped during the last years with new drilling ships. And as you can see in the picture, the Turkish Navy is also escorting these drilling ships, especially in the Western Cyprus. I will show you some maps here, and you'll understand why is it so sensitive, all of these areas.
קצר קצת.
Turkey is also launching. Turkey also launched last year a very impressive military drill in the Eastern Mediterranean. They made some rehearsals against Greece. They tried to. They made some exercises to control an island, to shoot down an F-16 or UAVs. And when we are looking at the inventories of many different countries in the region, we can see only who are the holders of F-16s: Israel, Greece, and Egypt. And who are the holders of UAVs, unmanned air vehicles? Greece and Israel. So we can see that with this military drill, Turkey sent a very clear message, especially to Greece and Cyprus. And here I would like to show you a map next to Mr. Erdogan, behind Mr. Erdogan. This map is called the Blue Homeland. As you can see here, it is we can see the borders of the Turkish naval homeland, so-called. But the problem here we have some Greek islands, okay? And according to the Turkish policy, Turkey is calculating its continental shelf from its mainland, and is also expecting Greece to calculate its own continental shelf from its own mainland. And as a result, if this version of calculation will be valid, then the Greek islands are going to become a new Greek enclaves in the Turkish territorial waters, that it is not acceptable by the Greek administration. So this is a very crucial problem in the Aegean Sea. And in order to increase its domination in the Eastern Mediterranean, last year, December 2019, Turkey inaugurated a new UAV air base in Geçitkale in northern Cyprus. And besides that, they also inaugurated a new Navy base in İskele, so that they will have instant intelligence on what is going on in the Eastern Mediterranean. And thanks to this new Navy base, they will have the rapid response ability. Of course, when we are speaking about the Eastern Mediterranean, here is the pipeline, the proposed pipeline, the Israeli, Greek, Cypriot, and Greek pipeline. Of course, as you can see, it is passing, here is Greece, the C is Greece, and B is, of course, Cyprus. So all of this particular territory is claimed by Turkey. I would like to show you here a map. Here you can see this latest map. As you can see here, Turkey in last December signed a new maritime delimitation agreement with Libya's Sarraj government. And as a result, Turkey is breaking the geographical contiguity between Greece and Republic of Cyprus. So let's say that we have sent our pipeline to Cyprus, but Turkey is basically putting a naval fortification wall, and it's hindering this whole project. Okay, this is very important. And also in the territorial waters of Cyprus, there are many disagreements, crucial disagreements between Turkey and Cyprus. Now let's pass to Libya. This is the Libya's map before the intervention of the Turkish armed forces in November 2019. And then we began to see the intervention of the Turkish armed forces. And please look at this map. This is after the Turkish aid to the Muslim Brotherhood affiliated government of Tripoli. Okay, so Turkey is very much present in Libya, and they are doing, I must admit, a very great job if we are looking from their perspective. And the most important hero of this whole campaign, of course, are the UAVs, made in Turkey UAVs. This is the name of this UAV is called Bayraktar, okay, the flag barrier. This is produced under the ownership of Mr. Erdogan's son-in-law. Okay, this is bearing his surname, Bayraktar. Besides Libya, Turkey is also trying to penetrate nowadays to Yemen, thanks to the former transportation minister of Yemen, Saleh Al-Jabwani. Turkey is trying to recruit new militias in Yemen. They are trying to fill the vacuum that emerged due to the withdrawal of the United Arab Emirates forces from Yemen. So nowadays, Turkey is trying to act as the new patron of the Southern Transitional Council in Yemen. As we know, there are 3 different belligerents in Yemen. In the south, we have this Southern Transitional Council. In the west, we have the Houthis, that they are basically supported by the Iranians. And the rest of the territories are controlled by this Saudi-supported Hadi government. So also in Turkey is trying to penetrate in the Shabwa and Abyan provinces. I also would like to emphasize that these 2 provinces are very rich in terms of oil, and it's not a secret that Turkey would like to expand its influence to the west, to the Bab el-Mandab Straits, in order to strangle Egypt, because of this, as I already mentioned, Turkey is seeing Abdel Fattah Sisi's government of Egypt as illegitimate, and as a result, they are trying to challenge the Egyptians, not only in Libya. Libya, as you know, is the neighboring country of Egypt on the west, but also Turkey is creating a very important headache for Egypt, also in Yemen, with this creeping penetration that began to germinate only a few months ago. And I would like to conclude this short briefing with Hagia Sophia. As I guess you all heard, approximately 3 days ago, last Friday, the Turkish president Recep Tayyip Erdogan declared that Hagia Sophia became a mosque once again. I would like to remind you very shortly this short story of Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia was the Byzantine Orthodox cathedral. This magnificent building was turned into a mosque in 1453 when the Ottomans conquered the city of Constantinople and turned the city's name into Istanbul. Of course, they all painted the walls of Hagia Sophia with a white paint in order to erase the marks of the Christian orthodoxy of icons. And this was the case until 1934. In 1934, the founder of the Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, he basically declared this whole building as a museum, and he revealed once again the icons of the Orthodox Church. So from 1934 until last Friday, this particular building did not function as a mosque. But I must admit that the Turkish public always regarded this building as a mosque and not as a museum. Okay, in this regard, I would also like to mention here that this is a very complex issue. There is a disagreement between the Russians and Ukrainians and the Church of Constantinople. So it's a very complex game here. That's why we cannot hear any protests from Moscow, because Erdogan sees the right opportunity and he exploited this friction between the Church of Istanbul and Church of Moscow because of the Church of Ukraine. It's such a long story, but I would like to show you here some pictures. As you can see here, you're seeing here the mosaic of Jesus and Mary, of course in Greek style, and you're seeing here the seal of Allah and seal of Muhammad. Since the building was used as a mosque, so we see also the Christian symbols as well as the Muslim symbols. And here you're seeing the press conference of Mr. Erdogan. He first of all read the decree of Mehmet the Conqueror, who conquered Constantinople, and he justified the decision, his decision to turning Hagia Sophia back to as a mosque. Okay. And then he declared his decision. And as a result, in the social media, we began to see these kind of cartoons that Hagia Sophia is again free. It is breaking its chains. God willing, we can play that. So thank you very much in the name of the Sultan of the Sultans, Erdogan. Thank you very much for this, for your patience. Of course, if you have any questions, I would be delighted to answer your questions. Ephraim.
Please unmute yourself and you can ask, a question. Yaniv, please.
I mean, Erdogan seems to have, more lives than Castro and Arafat combined. So at what point does his luck run out and overplay his hand, and he's either pushed out by, Macron and Putin hatching up something, or by internal strife, or the generals rise up? I mean, how much longer do we have to suffer his adventurism and his arrogance? I mean, it's...
Well, I guess he's going to be with us until God will decide to take his life, or someone else. He's doing everything that he's doing everything to eliminate all those that may take his life. So given the fact that he was born in 1954, so we can only wish him a very long life so that I can make my living here in Israel. But I must admit that he already began to dominate. He already began to dominate the Turkish armed forces. He's in a very professional way. He's a very great chess player, from my opinion. In my opinion, he's defeating all of his rivals one by one. He's forging new alliances. For instance, the current alliance is forged with the Turkish nationalists that was emerged in 2015. Beforehand, look how charismatic he is. Before forging an alliance with the Turkish nationalists, his partners were the Kurds. Okay, so he's sort of a chameleon. He can basically get the shape. Let's say he's like a water. He can take the shape of his glass. Okay, the main purpose here is his survival. If he can survive, so from his perspective, everything is okay, because from their point of view, the Turkish state is a perpetual state. What I mean by that, in the beginning of the lecture, Ephraim presented me, as an Israeli who was born in Turkey, in Istanbul. In the Turkish schools, we were taught that the Turkish statehood is something eternal, meaning that whenever a Turkish empire collapses, at that particular time, another Turkish empire rises. We have many examples, but the most concrete examples are the Seljuk Empire. When the Seljuk Empire collapsed, we had the Ottoman Empire. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed, we had the Republic of Turkey. So how am I connecting all of this vision with today's Erdogan? From Erdogan's perspective, he's not in a fear that his country will vanish. He knows that no country in the Middle East can occupy Turkey. No one can occupy Turkey. Not Greece, not Bulgaria, not Iranians. Okay, so the Turks have no fear of existence. For instance, in Israel, unfortunately, we have this fear of existence because unfortunately our statehood was taken away from us in the history. But Turks have always enjoyed a continuous reign. Okay, a continuous.
We'll take another question now.
Yeah. So Erdogan, let me only conclude. Erdogan, that's why he's always concentrating on his government, and they have no fear. So the problem here, what will be the spirit of Turkey? Turkey will always exist. What is the spirit of Turkey? This is the question.
Yeah. Any other question?
Ephraim, I have a
Yes,
question.
sure.
Yes, Greg.
Thank you very much. Two things. First, I didn't hear any discussion, or perhaps I missed it, of Iran and the military dynamics, and I'd appreciate hearing that. The second thing is just an observation, is I think what they're doing with Hagia Sophia is an opportunity. It's an opportunity because nobody, certainly in the United States where I am, or in Western Europe, if you ask them, somebody, including a Christian, what does 1453 mean to you? And they'll look at you blank. If you ask them what is Hagia Sophia, unless they took an art history course, they have no idea. You ask them what the Ottoman Empire was, they probably think it's some kind of living room furniture. So this is an opportunity, and I'm serious, I'm really serious about this. This is an opportunity to educate people about Muslim colonialism, Muslim imperialism, and that the world is not as simple as we now hear it to be in terms of Western colonialism. So I hope that Israel and other people can use this to educate Christians and educate Americans and Europeans regarding the actual history of the dynamics between the Muslim world and the Christian world.
Mr. Mashberg, if you allow me, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from a Middle Eastern perspective, I grew up in Turkey and I'm living in Israel. From my point of view, maybe I'm mistaken, maybe it's another story in the US, but I guess many people know what is Hagia Sophia, what is the conquest of Istanbul, Christianity versus Islam. In this geography, from my perspective, you don't have to agree with me, these things are known. Maybe in Europe and maybe in Western, maybe in West, it's not known. That's another story, and I agree with you on that. And regarding Iran,
I'd say I agree. I agree totally with what you just said. No problem. We're on the same page.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And no offense, of course.
Of course not. No, that's what I.
And regarding Iran, your point was was of course accurate. I also would like to mention here the Turkish perspective of Iran. These two countries are not fighting with each other more than a century. Their border is a natural border. No colonial powers dictated the borders between the Ottomans and the Safavids. Okay, so we know that there is an harmony in the border area. This borders was set with the Zuhab Treaty, or with the Turkish name Kasr-ı Şirin. The thing is, the two countries are engaged in a very bitter rivalry. They are not fighting each other in their border, but they are fighting a proxy war in Syria and in Iraq. While the Turkish administration is supporting the Free Syrian Army, the Iranians are supporting Hashd Shaabi and other, and of course Bashar al-Assad. So we cannot talk about a Turkish-Iranian war, but we can talk about a proxy war. Okay, and I already mentioned about this Turkey's creeping penetration into Yemen. If it will be something more concretized, we may see another important theater, a proxy war theater between Houthis and the Southern Transitional Council of Yemen. Okay, so besides that, Turkey is regarding to Iran traditionally as an important rival and opponent, and especially in the aftermath of the Islamic Revolution. It's not a secret that Iranians tried to export their Islamic Revolution into Turkey, and the Turkish forces did their best in order to stop Iran's ambitions. And I assume also Erdogan is seeing Iran as an important threat because of the fact that the Iranians have, for instance, long-range missile systems. Erdogan is also commanding the Turkish army to have these kind of missiles because of the fact that the Iranians have their own nuclear program. Nowadays, Mr. Erdogan, thanks to Russian support, they are building their new nuclear reactor in the city of Mersin. Okay, so we are seeing that Turkey is doing its best in order to balance Iran, but when we are looking at the border is like a paradise. Nothing is happening there. Okay.
I think we should add also that Turkey helps Iran in
circumventing
sanctions, American sanctions. Those
also,
are basically now anti-American forces.
You're right.
Out of Iraq. So there is both don't like the Kurdish nationalism. So there is a very complex relationship between those two countries.
Thank you very much for adding, Ephraim.
Orna, please.
Question regarding the Kurds and the triangle with Syria, different Kurdish parties, and Turkey.
Apologies, but please mute yourselves, the ones who are not speaking. Apologies again. Can you please repeat your question? I could not hear it.
Can you comment more in depth about the triangle of Turkey, Syria, and the Kurds and what's going on there now? There's always shifting sands.
Sure. Okay. First of all, we should understand that the Kurdish nation is dispersed in 4 different territories. This is Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Okay. This geographical land is called Kurdistan. Okay, so the Kurds, unfortunately, they are living in a landlocked geography. When you're living in a landlocked geography, it's making you dependent to the external, to your external neighbors. Okay, because your external neighbors are your gateway to the world. And in the last Kurdish independence referendum, we all happened to see that Iran, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, they all tried to strangle Kurdistan, and they all closed their air corridors to Kurdistan, and as a result, we happen to see that the international community also didn't want to provide any legitimacy to Kurdistan, and also they suffered with this bitter coincidence that also Catalonia wanted to become an independent state in Spain. So many European countries, you know, I guess they adopted a status quo policy and not to give a green light to this kind of adventures. And as a result, nowadays in Iraq, we have a government called Kurdistan Regional Government of Barzani. Barzani is considered sort of a partner of Turkey. Turkey and KRG, the Kurdistan Regional Governments, they are cooperating together in terms of trade, and they are cooperating against the PKK, for instance. But Turks and the KRG cannot see themselves sort of allies, I must admit. And also, when we are looking in Syria we have another player called PYD-YPG. PYD-YPG is the from the Turkish eyes, it is the another name of the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, that they are getting when they are passing the border in order to legitimize themselves, because the PKK is considered as a terrorist organization by US and EU. So the PYD-YPG has no proper relations with the KDP of Masoud Barzani, with KRG. And we cannot speak about a unity among the Kurds. In Iran, there is a very harsh, how should I say, coercion of the government, So we cannot speak about any real acts in Iran. And in Turkey, there is a Kurdish political party which is nowadays is suffering from a delegitimization process of Mr. Erdogan. I already mentioned that Erdogan forged an alliance with the Turkish nationalists. So that was the price that Erdogan had to pay for this kind of an alliance. They are doing everything to delegitimize the Kurds in Turkey. So as a result, when we are looking to the map, the current situation of the Kurds are not very promising, unfortunately, what we are seeing. But they're, from my perspective, the best, the most developed and the most optimist canton could be described as the Northern Iraqi Kurdistan.
Any other question?
This is Sharon. This is Sharon asking you a question on something you didn't cover in a fascinating presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you update us on the situation of Turkey's Jews and what's going on for them, and what, you know, whether the Hagia Sophia is an impact on the Jewish community? What is?
Okay. So first of all, for 22 years, I was considered as a member of that community, of Turkey's Jewish community. Nowadays, I guess the population of the Jewish community stands for like approximately 14,000, which is not filling a stadium here in Israel. So I'm always using the metaphor of a stadium because this can concretize the number of people in a very good way. Most of the Jews in Turkey are living in Istanbul. We have, if I'm not mistaken, 1,000 or 2,000 in Izmir and a couple of families in Ankara, in the capital city. Most of the people are tradesmen. They are not allowed to work as government officials. Of course, the law is permitting them, allowing them, but the unwritten laws are not allowing them to act as judges, as governors, or etc. So maybe you heard, maybe you didn't heard. There is a new law in Spain and in Portugal that these two states are providing citizenship for the descendants of the Sephardic Jews who were exiled from Spain in 1492. So again, when we are speaking about Middle East, as you see, 1492 is something very alive here in the Jewish community, like it happened yesterday. For instance, I have a friend, his name is Kemal Levi, okay? Kemal is a Turkish name and Levi is Levi, you know? So the border policeman in Denmark stopped him because of his name, Kemal Levi, and he was holding a Spanish passport, but he cannot speak any Spanish. So they thought that he was something like Al-Qaeda or something, like he's a fake guy. So he began to speak about, you know, my ancestors, they were kicked out from Spain in 1492, and the border policeman was astonished from this historical lecture, but this was a very Jewish history, okay? So our Kemal is also Turkish, is also Israeli, and also Spanish at the same time. So many Turks, many Jewish Turks are acquiring Spanish and Portuguese passports. Not all of them are going to these countries, but they are going to Anglo-Saxon countries with these new passports. They are moving to United States, Canada, Australia, but majority of them are moving to Israel. And especially after this failed coup attempt, I happened to see that we are making so much reunions with lots of friends that I could not imagine that they will move to Israel, because from my perspective, they were not Zionists, but surprise, surprise, they are here with us, and they are telling me, hi, you were right, here is our home, etc. Okay, so this is a very long story, but when you're opening the newspaper of the Turkish Jewish community, you're seeing a very sad picture, because each week we have more deaths and we have less births. Okay, so you don't have to become a very an expert on mathematics that you can understand that many people are leaving the country. We have less births. The divorce rates are also increasing. We have less marriages. We have mixed marriages. Okay, so according to this calculation, unfortunately, in 30 to 40 years, we may see maybe like a couple of, I don't know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000, or very optimistic, 5,000 people will remain in Turkey. So this is the sad story of the Turkish Jews. Many of them had to emigrate also because of the economic situations, because they're not eager to make them with them business. For instance, my father is a very good example. He was accused that he was sending money to Israel Defense Forces, and as a result, he come to Israel.
You should know that Chai is giving much of his time to help Turkish Jewish immigrants in Israel. He also goes once in a while to Istanbul and give seminars there about life in Israel, and try to mix Aliyah from Istanbul, something that is more often. Yeah, any additional question?
Yes, if I may. You have not talked about Erdogan and Trump's seeming tangled relationship and the impact that that has had, specifically romance or manipulation of Trump, I might say. Could you comment on that and how that impacts
just
the whole Middle East and particularly Israel?
Just wanted to emphasize something. Before delivering this lecture, today Ephraim called me twice. He told me, hi, you should have it very short, you know, you have to do it in a very summarized manner, compact. So apologies for not being able to have everything, but that's why we have this Q&A session. So this so-called romance between Erdogan and Trump, unfortunately, I cannot provide you very concrete yet, but I can tell you that there are very, very many rumors in the Turkish social media, and we can also hear some from Turkish academics who are very close to the government, that these two men, they had a very good relationship. Trump is approaching to Erdogan like a businessman. So today he may be angry to Erdogan, but tomorrow he can mend these relations. He is not judging Erdogan in terms of a worldview according to an ideology. From my understanding, the ideology of Mr. Trump is more money-oriented. Of course, you may disagree with me. But as far as I understand, Mr. Erdogan is providing what he wants. Again, there are many rumors, but there are many lobbying firms in the US that Mr. Erdogan is paying lots of money, and they are in somehow connected with Mr. Trump. So there are many rumors that both of the leaders are very well connected, but they're technocrats. Let me be more accurate. The State Department and the Pentagon people who are not affiliated with Donald Trump are sometimes creating problems for this bromance. So from Erdogan's perspective, if Donald Trump could rule the United States as Erdogan rules Turkey, so from Erdogan's perspective, the life could be a lot easier. But since in the US we have many checks and balances and many other actors that are involved in decision-making process, so this is creating a so-called friction between Erdogan and Trump. But from my understanding, Erdogan would want to see Donald Trump instead of Biden. That's what I can see.
I think it's a bit wrong to view it on personal, as a question of Erdogan and Trump. We should be aware that in Washington there is a strong lobby, and many people in Pentagon as well as in the State Department are very pro-Turkish, and they try to continue this relationship despite the fact that Turkey does not behave always as America would like it to behave, despite the fact that it is not a good NATO member. But the American options, particularly when it wants to go out and to leave the Middle East, are not that good without Turkey. Those people in those important bureaucratic positions carry an influence in tolerating much of the Turkish mischief in the region.
Thank you very much, Reddy.
I was just going to make a statement. Thank you, Ephraim. I agree with what you just said, Ephraim, 100%. I would encourage the speaker that when you have some free time, probably don't, take a look deeper into the State Department's history and its interaction with every one of the last probably 6 or 8 presidents, because the State Department has a history of being Arabist and trying to support the military-industrial complex. That's the financial aspect here. I respectfully disagree with your comment about Trump on the money, because Trump's not about the money while he's president. It's about the ego. And the ego of him is that he wants to be able to project that he has all these relationships, and some he has and some he doesn't, but it's very mercurial because of the fact that whatever he says, I'd encourage you to look 10 to 14 days later to see how it's walked back, because that ends up being what he does, not what he says initially. And he's focused on his ego, I think, almost 100%, which partly may be good, may be bad. I'm not evaluating it. Anyway, that was my statement.
Thank you very much. I will take this into my consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, just to read up on that a bit, because they have an my opinion is the Department
we are students for life. We are here to learn. So thank you very much for this contribution. I appreciate it.
Hi, and Ephraim, have you had the opportunity to make this presentation or some aspects of it to American political and governmental leaders, military people?
Ephraim, would you like to answer before me?
Actually, Chai and myself and Eran Lerman, that you know, were last December in Washington at a conference with the Hudson, co-sponsored by the Hudson Institute, as well as Bnei Brit International. And we did speak about, our opinion, what Turkey is. Of course, Chai was an active member of our delegation. We also briefed at that time congressmen and senators. So we do have a small say, at least, in what's happening in Washington in this area. I'm proud to be a small contributor to the cancellation of the F-35 with my appearances in Congress and my writings. And so we have, but we are, of course, an Israeli think tank. We are not living the Washington life. But whenever we are there, we are speaking and people are listening to us. And when the skies were open, of course, there is the time people from America are coming here. And so we brief, of course, all the diplomats, American as well as others. So our voice on those issues and our expertise is being heard.
And if you allow me, Ephraim, I would like to also make another, I also would like to answer on that. During our last visit, we gave an emphasis to the Eastern Mediterranean. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Ephraim, but we always spoke about Eastern Mediterranean and these pipeline issues. And I wish we could also speak more broadly about Turkey's regional aspirations, Libya, Yemen, or Turkey's armament projects. Unfortunately, of course, we could not cover everything because each visit has its own theme. And Ephraim mentioned about our last visit. From my perspective, I'm not objective, of course. From my perspective, it was very successful, but we should also ask our hosts. We could only speak about the Eastern, and I wish we could also address the administration about also other matters.
Any additional question? Okay, I want to thank Chai for his presentation.
Thank you.
And please note that our next briefing in 2 weeks will be about the Iranian space program by Dr. Uzi Rubin, who is the father of the Israeli missile program. And, so I bid you well from Jerusalem. All the best. And
Thank you.
One day you'll be able to travel and come and we'll speak.
Thank you very much, Ephraim.
Thank you. Thank you.
All the best.
All the best. Bye-bye.